What's up guys, Torres here. If you're new to this channel, I'm a first year chemical engineering student at the Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago, Illinois. I did cross country and track and field in high school and currently run at the NCAA Division III level. The idea behind this video is something I came up with when I first came to college this fall, and it's taken a while for me to get around to it. But here it is. This is my D3 story. I hope you enjoy what I have to say. When I was little, around kindergarten to 3rd grade, I was a pretty skinny, active kid. I dabbled a little bit into some soccer at the YMCA, but nothing serious really. Once I got to around 4th grade, however, I started snacking often and developing other unhealthy habits. The worst of this was around 5th grade. It's not something I'm particularly proud of, but yeah, that's how it was. Ironically, 5th grade was also the time when I first took interest in track and field, which stemmed from none other than Usain Bolt. I love the concept of pushing your body to achieve previously unimaginable marks and redefining what the human body is capable of. If nothing else, it's a journey to see how far you can go in the sport. I started by running on my own once in a while around my neighborhood. I measured out a 1.07 mile loop that took me nearly 14 minutes to complete. Oh shoot, watch out, we got a child prodigy over here. Nah, but on a serious note, I knew that I was slow, but I didn't realize just how slow I was. I did manage to improve to 11 minutes or so by the end of 5th grade, but it was still nothing to write home about. Going into middle school, I was still chubby and only running for fun once in a while. Something that motivated me was a series of running tests and foot races we had in PE. Don't worry, I checked to make sure that the track we used was indeed 400 meters, and you should see that right here. Every fall, we were tested to see how many laps we could run in 15 minutes. In the spring, it changed to 20 minutes. We were great on these, but just for fun, we also hosted some track and field events in the spring, like the 100, 400 mile long jump, you know, all the good stuff. The top 10 performers for each event in each grade, for boys and girls separately, will be put on the gym walls for bragging rights. In 6th grade, I got 5 laps for the 15-minute runs. Now, before you laugh, that actually got me a B. To save time, I'll go ahead and just put the grading rubric for the 15 and 20-minute runs right here. And in the fall of 6th grade, I would usually get 5 laps for the 15-minute run, and in the spring, I would get 7 laps for a 20-minute run. And you can go ahead and just pause it if you want to take a closer look. Okay, you can laugh now. You done? Okay, good. So anyway, for the track and field events, I made it my mission to make the top 10 list for at least one event. I ran 10 minutes in the mile, and I don't really remember what else I did, but it doesn't really matter because I know I didn't make the top 10 list in any event. This devastated me, and I was more determined than ever before to get into shape. Over the summer and throughout 7th grade, I lost a ton of weight and got way faster. I ran 8 laps in the 15-minute run and 11 for the 20-minute run, which were literally off the charts. I say literally because during these runs we would carry a cart with boxes that would be marked for every lap that we completed to make sure that no one was cheating. Anyway, I hit a big PR for the mile in 7th grade with a 6:37, and I also high jumped 4 for 4 and long jumped about 13 feet. A few of those marks got me onto the top 10 list, which made me very happy and motivated to continue getting better. In 8th grade, I lost even more weight to an arguably unhealthy level, but don't worry, I gained the weight back during high school, but nonetheless, losing the extra fat and consistently running and working out made me faster than I could have imagined. For the 15-minute run, I ran 8 laps with 10 push-ups in between each lap. Yes, I know that sounds weird, but that's just the way that my PE teacher instructed me to do it, but yeah, moving on. On December 31st, 2015, while I was still in 8th grade, I broke 6 minutes in the mile for the first time for a treadmill time trial. It was a pretty crazy day and I was probably running faster than everyone else in the gym at the time, but yeah, it was pretty fun. In the spring, I ran 12 laps consistently for the 20-minute run, and then I also ran 5:50 in the mile, 68 for the 400, and 4'7" for the high jump. Most of those marks got me into the top 10 list, and I felt such joy to know that I was one of the most athletic kids in my entire middle school of 2,000 plus students. The 5:50 mile in particular ranked me second behind another guy that ran 5:42. He was pretty chill, so no hard feelings. Totally no hard feelings. Well, soon after that, I graduated from middle school and was excited to see what awaited me in high school. When I began high school, I didn't sign up for a sport immediately, but found a thing called cross country. I didn't know much about it other than that it involved running. Like, did it involve running across the entire country, or... yeah, I didn't really know. But anyway, I got in touch with the coach, and even though the trials were passed, I was allowed on the team 2 weeks after the first day of school. I pretty much took those first 2 weeks completely off of training because it was hard to find time adjusting to a new school and all. On the first day of practice, we had a mile, well, really a 1600-meter time trial on our lovely dirt track. I ran 5:53 and became the 8th or 9th fastest man on the team. But anyway, that fall, I ramped up my mileage to I'd say probably about 30 miles a week. While I still wasn't training optimally and my coach had us doing some things that didn't, in my opinion, really make sense, I saw huge improvements by doing actual distance training. My first race was a time trial at a course where we usually run for the Val Jeff Invitational, where I ran 21:21 for 2.81 miles on some pretty tough hills. 2 weeks later, I ran 18:49 at the actual Invitational on the same exact course. Also, this is a meet that I ran every single year throughout high school, so you're gonna hear me talk about this Invitational quite a bit in this video. After that, I made my debut at Pierce, a 2.97 mile hilly course with a 2040. You're gonna hear me talk about this course a lot also because it's basically our home course and all of our championship meets are held here. I also ran a 1939 at Santa Clarita, which is a somewhat flat but also kinda hilly 2.95 mile course. I feel like I could have gotten more out of myself in that race, but it is what it is. Something else to keep in mind was that up to this point, I literally walked at least once for every single cross-country race that I ran. What? What the f? I know, crazy. But yeah, that was a really bad habit that I had to break. Fortunately, I did end up breaking that habit at the infamous Mount Sac Invitational, which I'm sure many of you have heard of as arguably one of the hardest cross-country courses in the nation. I ended up running 1912 there. I didn't walk during any more cross-country races from there on out. In the end, I finished with a season record of 5:23 in the 1600 on our dirt track and 18:28 at Pierce. Also for fun, at the track and field trials, I ran 2:30 in the 800, 68 in the 400, yes, same time for middle school, and 30.5 in the 200. Throughout the season overall, I improved greatly, stayed injury-free, and was introduced to the amazing sport that is cross-country. Also, shout out to my boy Stevie for making it to state and running 16:10 on the famous Woodward Park 5K course. That dude is a freaking legend. After the cross-country season, I kept running on my own and doing workouts because no one told me that I was supposed to take a break after the season ends. I did some really weird workouts similar to that my coach gave me because I didn't really know any better. These included feature laps, 400s with push-ups and core between intervals, lunging for 100 meters, and other crazy stuff. I was still fairly new to running, so this was good enough to keep me in good shape, and I actually ended up running an 1853 Road 5K on Christmas. Once school started in January, we got a new assistant coach who graduated from our school in 2012 and ran D1 at Sacramento State. He's the main person who coached me throughout the rest of my high school running career, so big shout out to him. Anyway, we started by slowly building up a base. This was a lifesaver for me because, while I didn't realize it at the time, my body needed a break from doing workouts all winter and fall, and I probably would have burned out if I continued training hard. My new coach gave us actual running workouts like mile repeats, tempos, 400s, 800s, you know, all the good stuff. I built up to probably 35 to 40 miles a week that season, and I think it was pretty good for me at the time. Despite a few small lingering injuries throughout the season, I improved greatly compared to the previous cross-country season. The 1 800 I ran that season was only a 2:27 because I was slightly injured during the race. My focus, however, was on the 1600 and 3200. My goals were to run sub 5 and sub 11. For the 1600, I started with a 5:28 on our home dirt track at a dual meet in March, and then worked down to a 5 flat time trial that I ran at the end of May. For 3200, I started with a 12:02 that I ran in trainers after that 5:28 with practically no warm-up, and then by the end of the season, I worked down to an 11 flat at Farshock League Finals, which got me 3rd place in the race. My goal was to make it to city, but I fell short by 3 seconds. So basically, my highlights that season were a 5 flat 1600 and 11 flat 3200. Sure, I wanted to run sub 5 and sub 11, but I'm totally not salty about not doing that. Totally not salty. But seriously, it was an amazing experience doing track and field for the first time, and I'm so grateful to have a coach and team that pushed me more than I thought possible. Over the summer of 2017, I ramped up the mileage to the 40s and peaked at about 49. My coach told me to do these runs at a very easy pace. The problem was that I didn't know what my easy pace was because all of freshman year I just ran the same pace that everyone else ran. So that summer I ended up running probably 10-minute pace most of the time, and I gotta say, it didn't get me in all that great shape. To see what I could do, I participated in some summer cross-country meets at College of the Canyons, which is another course I'll talk about several times throughout this video. It's 3 miles and fairly hilly with a downhill last mile that finishes on the track. It's not that fast, but it is kind of fast if you know how to run it well. I only managed to run a 1907 here because I was really out of shape in terms of speed and didn't know much about how to run the course intelligently. On the first week of school, I ran a 5:45 1600 meter time trial on our dirt track and trainers, which I was really disappointed about. After all, I ran 5 flat the previous track season, and a year ago, at the exact same time, I ran a 5:53. What was wrong with me? I didn't realize at the time, but it was because I rarely ran sub 6 pace all summer, and running a 600 meter time trial was a big shock to the system. However, even though my summer training wasn't ideal, I built a large, strong foundation that allowed me to hold about 35 to 40 miles a week for the rest of the season and make large improvements. I ended up running 17:43 at Beljeff, which was extended slightly from 2.81 miles to 2.84 miles. Despite that, I shattered my PR from 18:49 the previous year. I also had a good showing at Santa Clarita where I ran 17:44, which was a big improvement over the 19:39 from the previous year. Due to construction at Mount Sac, our team wasn't able to get into an invitational, but we did manage to replace it with Apache, which is a dummy quick 3-mile course on all flat and fast grass. I had just begun tapering because it was already late October, and somehow I busted out a 17:07. I was super stoked about this and it made me feel unstoppable. The following week was league finals, which was held at Pierce, and I ran a big PR of 17:25. This was a 1 minute and 3 second improvement over the 18:28 from the previous year, and I was ecstatic even though I didn't make it a city. To cap off my season, I ran a turkey trot 5K on Thanksgiving and ended up running a 18:45, which I was pretty upset about at the time because it was slower than most of the other times that I run that season, but I mapped it on Google Maps and found that it was actually 3.19 miles, which means that I ran 5:52 pace. So it was actually a pretty decent race for me. Overall, the season didn't quite start as I had expected, but it was really good overall. Also, shout out to my boy Charles who ran 16:11 at league and was far and away our top guy that year. Going into my sophomore year of track, I basically did the opposite over the winter that I did the previous summer. I built my mileage more slowly and was running about 7:20 to 7:40 pace for most of my runs, which was a little fast for my fitness at the time, but not that fast. This, combined with more frequent workouts, got me into shape very quickly. I built up to a 42-mile week before I sustained a small Achilles injury that took me out for a few days in mid-January. This was a little worrying as my first meet was an all-comers meet on February 3rd. I didn't have many expectations going into this, but I would have been happy just breaking 520 in the 1600. Somehow I ran a 506, followed by a 221 800, and then a 29.01 200 just for fun, which is also still my official 200 meter PR to this day. And then on top of that, like a cherry on a sundae, I split 62 high on a 4x4 team that went 359. Yes, that is me, not knowing what to do as my first ever relay.
Bruh. Look at this dude.
To this day, that's still probably my most successful track meet ever. It was very early season, yet I already set a few PRs and had some of my fastest races up to that point. The season was looking bright. My training was going really well and I was hitting about 45 to 50 miles a week and continuing to improve. Despite donating blood in mid-February, I got into really good shape by March. I was eyeing the Simi Valley Invitational, which is a meet I'll talk about a few times in this video. It's a 2-day invite with a distance carnival on Friday night, and on Saturday morning/afternoon, they have all the other events. My plan was to run the 3200 on Friday night and then the 800 on Saturday morning. In the 3200, I shattered 11 minutes for the first time with a 10:42. It was an insanely good race for me, and I pretty much paced it perfectly. The next morning, I ran 2:17 in the 800, which remained my PR for the rest of the season, and I'm pretty happy with it. Not as happy as the 10:42, but I was still happy with it. Also, you can see that a lot of people passed me in the last 100 meters because I made a move too early, so that was a big oof. In the beginning of April, I ran the Frost Shop 3200 at a meet called the Tiger Invite, also a meet that will be mentioned again in this video, and ran a 10:30. That was a really good race for me as I PR'd by 12 seconds. In fact, even now, I can say it was probably the best 3200 meter race of my life. Not because of the time I ran, but because of how well I executed the race, even splitting 5:15 and 5:15. It was another breakout race for me, and I was super stoked about it. 2 weeks later at a duo meet, I broke 5 minutes in the 600 for the first time with a 4:58. This was pretty long overdue, and I was expecting to have broken 5 minutes much earlier, but hey, better late than never. So, my training is going really well, I'm in the best shape of my life, PRs are falling left and right, and I get injured.
Boy!
Yes, right before championship season, I got a toe injury that took me out for over a week. I don't know why, it could have been the new shoes that I got 2 weeks prior, but I think the main reason was just overtraining. I don't think the 45 to 50 miles a week in of itself was bad, but I think doing most of my easy runs at about 7 flat to 720 pace and doing 3 to 4 workouts a week was the main culprit. I think my true easy pace was somewhere in the 740s to 750s range, and 3 workouts a week is fine, but for me, only 2 of those can be actually hard workouts, and the other one has to be more of a medium kind of workout. Whatever caused the injury, it took me out for a week where I had to exclusively bike. This was my first injury in my running career that took me out for more than a few days. While I didn't lose much fitness, a calf injury popped up when I started to run again, but it wasn't enough to stop me from running entirely. To make matters worse,
League was only 4 days after the first day that I started running.
No! No! No!
this was a race where I ran 11 flat and almost made it to city the previous year. I originally planned to double in the 600 and 3200, but due to my injury, I stuck with only a 3200. I felt a little out of shape during the race and my calf was bugging me, so I only ran 10:48. Even though in 2017 I got third with an 11 flat, this 10:48 only got me 6th. Fortunately, I made it to city. I kept training the next 2 weeks and was actually doing well in workouts, but my calf was still bugging me. Unfortunately, I ended up running 10:48 again at city. The race was super fast. The leader went out in 4:54 the first 1600, and I was well off the front pack going out in 5:15. I ended up finishing 11th, which, looking back, I'm actually pretty happy with considering all the factors that were working against me. The week after that, I ran the Expedition 4x800 meters at City Finals where I opened in 2:18, which again, I'm happy with knowing that I was in my best shape. A few days later, I sold a 600 meter time trial in 5:03. My calf was on fire after that because I had run on it for almost a month already, but I took my usual 2-week break right after that race. So that's pretty much it for my sophomore year of track. It was a good season overall with some highs and definitely some lows. I learned that season that overtraining is a thing that exists and that I need to find a balance between volume and intensity without doing too much of either. While I'm happy that I was able to reach new heights in my running career, I was hungry to redeem myself that fall. Also, shout out once again to my main man Charles, who made it to state in the 3200 by running a 9:40 at City Finals. I was there to watch when it happened, it was truly an inspiring moment. What followed the 2018 track season was the best summer training of my life. I ramped up my mileage pretty quickly but made sure to go easy on easy days to prevent injuries. I was getting into really good aerobic shape despite not doing that many workouts. This was basically the opposite of the previous season where I was really out of shape over the summer. By the time College of the Canyons came around, I was up to 52 miles that week and ran a 17:18 out of nowhere. despite only having run 1907 the year before. I gained so much confidence knowing that I was in such good shape and it was only August. My mileage peaked at 56 in late August and I hovered around 50 to 55 miles a week after that. I kept getting better and I ran a 17:53 on a very hilly 3-mile course on September 1st despite cramping up the last mile. Unfortunately, things took a 180 when my teeth started hurting and it turned out that I had to get my wisdom teeth removed on October 1st, right in the heart of the season. Apparently, you're not supposed to partake in intense exercise when you get your wisdom teeth removed. So I would be forced to take an entire week off of all types of training, even cross training. For most people, taking a week off of training won't do much to your fitness, but for me, as you saw what happened in the previous track season, I lose fitness pretty quickly and probably more so than most people. While this really stinked, I at least knew ahead of time when my surgery was so that I could peak right before that, just in case I don't manage to get in shape again by November. Luckily, Valjev just happened to fall 2 days before the wisdom tooth removal. My coach and I agreed to peak me for that race and I ended up running a 16:53. This was a 50-second improvement over the previous year despite the course being extended yet again from 2.84 miles to 2.9 miles. I took a week off of all types of training when my wisdom teeth were removed and started running again on October 8th, 6 weeks out from city finals. Getting back into shape was a very rough process and teammates that I used to be were now beating me. At League, I only managed to run 17:25, the same time that I ran at League my sophomore year. To be fair, the weather was not quite as good this time around, but it was still extremely discouraging to run the same time 2 years in a row. I was shocked that taking a week off of training at the beginning of October affected my fitness so much for November. Fortunately, I made a comeback at city finals, also held at Pierce, by running 17:05. Better yet, I had more than the tank when I finished and I felt like I could have easily broken 17. Who knows, maybe I would have even run 16:50 if I had just executed a better race. I decided to have another go because I was eager to prove that all the training that I had done over the summer and fall was worth it. I ran a 5K time trial on Thanksgiving with some teammates on a somewhat muddy trail. Despite having to solo the last mile after going out in 11:16 the first 2 miles, I managed to run a 17:40 with a 17:05 3-mile split. I wasn't super happy with it at the time because I at least wanted to break 17 for my 3-mile split, but looking back, I actually think it was a pretty good effort. Also looking back, I realized that my wisdom teeth removal was a blessing in disguise. Over the summer, I think I ramped up my mileage too quickly and was putting myself on the road for burnout and injury, similar to the spring of 2018. I think if I kept training the way I was, I would have gotten injured and done even worse at city finals than I ended up doing. Religion isn't something that I talk about a lot on my channel, but I admit now that I am a practicing Catholic, and I think it wasn't God's will for this to happen as it probably led to a better overall season. Nonetheless, it was time to get pumped and ready for track. Alright, it's the winter of 2019. I'm coming off a decent cross-country season but have a chip on my shoulder. This is the most important year to impress colleges and get recruited. And, last but not least, this season marked the birth of, drum roll please, the Cavs Project! No, but seriously, this season is very special to me as I took myself to new levels of running and had lots of fun in the process. I made it my goal at the beginning of the season to run sub 440 in the 1600 and sub 10 in the 3200. I also wanted to make it to city finals in the 3200. Let's see how close I came to those goals. Over winter break, I didn't wrap up my mileage too quickly and didn't go too fast on easy runs. Despite that, I opened my season with a 1500 meter debut of 4:37 on January 26. I closed in 70 the last lap and was so stoked that I screamed at the top of my lungs when I finished. It was a really good confidence booster to be in such good shape when it's not even February and we weren't even doing high mileage or hard workouts yet. This was going to be a good season. I got into really good shape really quickly and was eyeing the Simi Valley Invitational on March 8th. Time-wise, I thought 10:20 or so would be realistic, but for some reason, my coach put me in invite heat and I felt like David against 20 Goliaths. The race went out super fast and I fell off the pack after the first lap and basically soloed a 10:29. I was disappointed with my performance, but I refocused for the 800 the following morning. Going into this race, I would have been happy running anywhere from 2:14 to 2:15-ish, but somehow I PR'd by 5 seconds and ran a 2:12. Similar to the 1500 that I ran back in January, I screamed at the top of my lungs when I finished. I redeemed myself from the previous night and was excited to see what the rest of the season would hold. The following week was a duo meet where I ran a 4:53 1600. I was trying to dip under 4:50 but got trapped behind 20 kids in the beginning of the race and only went out in 2:30 the first 800. So considering how much I negative split, I'm actually pretty happy with that. The next week was a 1600 at yet another duo meet. I paced off some teammates who pulled me to a big PR of 4:47. Better yet was that I closed in 68.9 the last lap, which was a big confidence booster both to my speed and strength. The week after that was another invitational where I ran a 10:17 3200. I thought I was in shape to run probably 10:10 to 10:15-ish, so 10:17 was slightly disappointing. To be fair, the race didn't play out quite as I had expected and my splits weren't ideal. This assured me that I still had room for improvement and it wasn't even April. The next week was the much anticipated Tiger Invite. The same meet where I ran 10:30 the year prior, except this time I was doubling in the 600 and 800. I actually did pretty well in the 600, running a 3-second PR of 4:44.61. The 800 didn't go very well because I was running in no man's land most of the race and had a hiccup with another kid with about 200 meters to go, and I ended up running a 2:16. It didn't really matter because I mostly just wanted to get in a good effort. But hey, at least I left with a 600 meter PR that made that goal of sub 440 fairly realistic come May. 3 weeks later was league prelims where I only ran the 600 because varsity didn't run the 3200 until the next week at league finals. It was pretty warm and the pacing wasn't ideal in that race, but despite that, I came really close to my PR of 444.91. It was pretty annoying to come so close to my PR and not get it, but I qualified to league finals, which ultimately was the main goal. Next week at league finals, I did the classic 1600 meter 3200 meter double. The weather still wasn't ideal, probably 80-ish degrees. The 1600 went out really fast and I was in no man's land for basically the entire race, and I got last place with a 446. I was forced to go out in 68 the first lap, which was much faster than I was used to, and then I ended up slowing down a lot. I was pretty frustrated to get last place and not PR. Not only that, but I planned to drop the 600 if I made it to city prelims, so I could concentrate on the 3200. In other words, the 444.61 from the Tiger Invite would remain my PR for the rest of the season, and that sub 440 was out of the question. Despite my dissatisfaction, I reshifted my focus to the 3200. This race, in polar contrast to the 1600, went out really slow. Most of us were doubling back, it was hot, and we honestly really just wanted to go home. It would be too arduous to concisely explain what the atmosphere surrounding this race was like, but I think this picture sums it up pretty well. Oh, and just for clarification, the dude on the right isn't getting lapped. He's also my teammate. Anyway, despite the conditions and being super tired, I ran my second fastest 3200 in that race of 10:27. I was very pleased with this and excited to see what I could do next week. Alright, here it is. City prelims. I needed to be in the top 16 in the 3200 in order to make it to city finals, which was one of my main goals at the beginning of the season. 440 was out of the window, but sub 10 was still in the question. The 10:27 from the previous week ranked me 9th going into this race, so I thought that it'd be good to go as long as I didn't choke. I was confident that I would run maybe 10:05-ish. I felt like that was the kind of shape that I was in, but ultimately the goal was to make it to city finals. The race went out really fast. I ran a 72 first lap and was almost in last place. My first 600 was a 501 and my 2K split was a 617. I was feeling good, passing a lot of people, and that's when things started to fall apart. I started running in no man's land from that point onward and was slowing down quite a bit. I hit the bell in 8:57. I didn't know at the time, but I was in 16th place. I just had to hold my position for one more lap. All of a sudden, with 250 meters to go, someone pulled up behind me and I started kicking. He dusted me the last 100 meters, so I'd have to settle for 17th place. Fortunately, alternates are allowed for city finals, so if someone pulled out in the finals, I would be allowed to race.
But wait! There's more!
It turned out that there was another guy who was 8 seconds behind me with a lap to go, and he passed me right at the finish line. My futile kick resulted in a 10:12. A 5-second PR, but not quite what I was looking for. A few minutes later, I saw the results on the scoreboard and saw that I got 18th place. My heart sank. That would have been good enough to make it to city finals the previous 2 years, but not this year. This was a very difficult moment for me, but I just sucked it up and accepted the good season that I had. For the next week, I cut my mileage considerably and did a lot of speed work in preparation for the Expedition 4x800 meters at city finals. I ran the second leg and split a PR of 2:11. I was hoping to run 2:10, possibly 2:09, but I was still happy with 2:11. My pacing wasn't ideal because I was pacing off a pack that went out fast the first lap and slowed down a lot the second lap, thereby slowing me down, and then I had to swerve around them and all this crazy stuff. Not to make excuses, I'm just trying to explain what happened. Anyway, my season was finally over. I could sit back, relax, eat some snacks, film for Cavs project, all that good stuff. Or so I thought. I started warming up as the 3200 approached just in case, by any chance, I made it in. Against all odds, not one, not two, but 3 people pulled out of the race. I had another shot to prove myself. I had made it to the boys varsity city finals 3200 meter championships in 2019. However, due to my lack of mileage and endurance work over the past week, I didn't have quite the same aerobic fitness that I had at city prelims. I also wasn't feeling the best after eating snacks and cheering for my teammates the past few hours. The race ran out really fast. The main pack went out in about 4:48 to 4:51 for the first 1600, and I was all the way back with a 5:05. I only managed to run 10:33 that day, but somehow I didn't finish last. Somehow, I beat a guy who ran 4:28 earlier that day and 9:56 the previous week. I was pretty disappointed with that 10:33, but considering all the factors working against me, I couldn't really complain about getting 14th place in the city. Looking back at the season as a whole, I may have overtrained a little over the winter by starting workouts around Christmas time. I think doing workouts this early caused me to run really fast in March and April, but left me not much room for improvement by May. That's okay though, because I learned my lesson and plan to apply it to my senior year across country. Coming off of the best track season of my life, I was poised to have a stellar cross-country season. My ultimate reach for the stars goal was to make it to state. There was a good chance I'd have to break 16 at Pierce in order to go, and my PR was still 17:05. However, I had taken my body to a new level the previous track season, and I didn't see why I couldn't do it again. My summer training went really well. I didn't go too fast on easy days, ramp up my mileage too quickly, or start doing workouts super early. I ran College of the Canyons again and didn't come in with high expectations because 1, the weather felt a little warmer than the previous year. 2, I was racing a week earlier in my training cycle compared to last year. And 3, I accidentally ran 18 miles within 48 hours before that race. I would have been happy just with PR and I ended up running a 17:21. I was slightly disappointed to not PR, but overall was still a good effort. The following week, my team spent 5 days at Big Bear for altitude training, which was one of the best weeks of my entire life. I ran 46 miles in those 5 days, did doubles, swam at the lake, went bowling, played games, and did a myriad of other activities I couldn't summarize succinctly. This was an unforgettable experience and my team bonded like crazy. Team chemistry is an important aspect for a team to do well, and we nailed that going into this fall. Our next race was Woodridge. Going into this, I had built up to consistent 55 to 60 mile weeks and felt in really good shape. My main goal was to break 16 and I ran 16:03. It would have been pretty funny to have my PR before be 17:05 and then completely skip the 16s and run in the 15s, but hey, I was still happy to PR by over a minute. Next week was Val Jeff. The previous year, if you'll recall, I peaked for this race and hit a 16:53. I thought I could blow it out of the water, but I ended up running a mediocre 16:49. College Jet 2019 was a mixed bag for a team, but those that did bad just accepted it and moved on. The following week was our first push to me at Pierce where I really redeemed myself. I PR'd by 16 seconds and ran a 16:49. I ran a really controlled race and felt good when I finished, and I was very pleased with it. 2 weeks later was our second cluster meet. We planned to train through this meet and not go all out, but some of us changed our minds at the last minute. James and Jason went out quickly, but I went out very conservatively. I caught Jason at the end of the second mile and dropped a 5:20 last mile for 16:52. This was really surprising because I didn't expect to run fast at all, but somehow I almost PR'd. Next week was Mount Sac, which I was finally able to race after 3 years and wanting to blow my 1912 from freshman year out of the water. Despite carrying a canopy for half a mile before this race and being really sore, and also despite the 80-ish degree weather, I ran a 17:03. I consider this a decent race but not a great one. It was a good effort nonetheless, but I was hungry to do more. The week after this was a race that I thought I'd never run again. Apache.
Let's go!
This is the meet where I ran 17:07 as a sophomore, except the course was changed to one that, in my opinion at least, was slower than both Woodbridge and the original Apache course. It was a really interesting race. Everyone was out like speeding bullets. James and Jason went out with the front pack, but I sat back and bided my time. Jason fell back and I caught him just after 2 miles. I was now in a pack of 5 hunting down James. With 400 meters to go, I was 8 seconds behind him. With 200 meters to go, I made a hard move to drop the pack and I inched closer to James with every step. Unfortunately, I was just 1 second away from being our team's number 1 guy. He ran 15:51 and I ran 15:52. I just had the best race of my life for my last high school invitational. This race gave me hope that a state berth was still possible. The following week was league finals. James didn't race due to injury, but we figured we didn't need him to make it to city prelims. The day was a little warm, but nothing too bad, or so I thought. I felt good in the beginning of the race, but for some reason, the heat got to me more than others and I wasn't able to stick with the front pack like I had originally planned. I ended up 13th with a 16:46. It was a 3-second PR, but I was expecting much more out of myself. Even worse was that we got 5th as a team when we thought we had top 3 in the bag. We still qualified for city prelims, which ultimately was the main goal. Despite my subpar effort, I knew I had much more in the tank and was ready to kill it at city. Then, it happened. 4 days after league, my foot started to hurt during a run. When I got home from practice, I was in excruciating pain. I tried to run the next day, but it hurt too much. City prelims was in 4 days, and I was injured for who knows how long. I just cross-trained that week and wore crunches to stay off my feet as much as possible. My teammates ended up killing it at city prelims. Jason ran 16:05, James 16:12, and Adrian 16:52 because he didn't have me to pace off of. They easily qualified to city finals and saved me a spot. The next week, my foot felt slightly better, but it still wasn't completely healed. Ideally, I would have taken more time off of running, but city finals was that Saturday and my team was depending on me. This was a race I had been looking forward to since my freshman year, back when I was running 18:28 at Pierce and just missed the varsity spot. I couldn't miss it. I couldn't. I ran 20 miles in the 6th day going into city finals, also swimming as much as possible. I still wasn't completely healthy and my calves were bugging me because due to the nature of my foot injury, I couldn't really stress my calves. I had no expectations for myself other than to give it my best and to not worsen my injury. Finally, on race day, the gun went off and everyone went out fast. I got jostled around and, for the first time in my entire running career, fell to the ground.
Fell to the ground.
Uncountable emotions overcame me at the same time. Once I got up, I assumed that the race would be called back. For some reason, it wasn't. I was 10 meters behind the next kid, but I had no choice but to try to catch them. I was really scratched up and my calves were on fire, but I had to keep going. I remained in last place for a minute before I started moving up. I passed 3 of my teammates and 34 other kids throughout the race and finished in 50th with a time of 17:27. I was pretty upset to end my senior year of cross country with my slowest performance of the season. On top of that, most of my teammates didn't do too well either. We got 7th as a team when we were projected to get 5th. Also, the last individual qualifier to state ran 15:59. If I had stayed healthy and continued to improve throughout championship season, who knows how close I would have been to achieving my ultimate goal of breaking 16 at Pierce and making it to state. I think our feelings in this moment can be best summed up by what our coach told us afterwards.
It ran terrible. One of our guys fell, and then he was looking at the ground and at the worms of the floor, and then he got up. But overall, there's things that we can't control. You know, overall, like, we weren't at 100. I think it was a great learning experience. I think it was one of those things that we needed to sort of humble down a little bit, because we were in a roller coaster where we're just going up. Overall, we can't win them all. I think we had a very good race. Let's keep our heads up high. Let's take these 2 weeks off, and then enjoy Thanksgiving. Cool. Good job, guys.
This was a very upsetting moment for us, but we had a successful season overall, and it was time to relax and look forward to the future. Sorry, I'm filming this video at a different time, and since you last saw me, I got a haircut and decided to put on a different sweater. But anyway, here we go, the rest of the video. After city finals, I was less assiduous towards rehabilitating my foot and was too aggressive when trying to get back into running. I made uncountable mistakes that delayed the time it took my foot to recover. This even carried over to the spring where I was running on and off. I would often take a few weeks off, try to run, feel my foot hurting, then take a few more weeks off, rinse and repeat. There was a bright side to my struggles, however, because the cancellation of the outdoor track season alleviated the pressure to rush back into shape. So I just continued cross training, lifting, icing, and doing whatever I could to heal myself while minimizing my loss in fitness. Also around this time was when I was contacting college coaches and trying to figure out where I want to go to college. Most high-performing prep athletes start looking into school's junior year, take visits before senior year, and then verbally commit by the end of the fall semester of their senior year. I was a little late to the game and didn't think about which schools I even wanted to apply to until the summer going into senior year. I completed most of my college apps between November 2019 and November 2020, and then I started getting in touch with coaches over the winter and talked to them throughout the spring. Overall, I was looking for academically competitive schools that I could run for. I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to major in, but I knew it would be science or engineering related, so I looked into schools that were good in those areas. I applied to lots of schools and narrowed down my choices by April 2020. It came down to these top contenders: WashU, Carnegie Mellon, UC Davis, UC Irvine, Loyola Marymount, Lewis and Clark, and Illinois Tech. WashU and Carnegie Mellon were very good academically, but have a national caliber D3 program that I would have been only lucky to walk onto. They also didn't offer me a good financial aid package. UC Davis and Irvine are both good academically with D1 programs that I wouldn't have been able to walk onto. They were relatively inexpensive since they were in-state public schools, however. They had running clubs which I looked into, but I decided that a club wasn't for me. I also thought that a smaller private school would be better for me than a big public school. Loyola Marymount is a small, private Catholic school right here in LA. My mom went there and really wanted me to go. I also got into the honors college and received a really good financial aid package. The downsides are that they're D1, so I wouldn't have been able to walk on, and they don't have a running club. Also, at the time that I applied, I hadn't decided that I wanted to be a chemical engineering major, and it turned out that LMU didn't have that specific major. Despite the many upsides, I unfortunately had to decline. Lewis and Clark is a small liberal arts school in Portland, Oregon. They have a good D3 program and the coach wanted me to go. However, they didn't really have what I wanted academically. This leaves us with none other than the Illinois Institute of Technology. They're a small tech school that's popular for engineering, including chemical engineering. The main campus is located in Chicago, a big city filled with amazing sights and vast opportunities. They also offer me a good financial aid package, and on top of all of that, they had a D3 team with a coach that actually wanted me. Through some recruiting calls, I realized that they were a program on the rise and that I could help them achieve their lofty goals. Finally, on May 1st, 2020, I publicly announced that I had committed to the Illinois Institute of Technology to continue my academic and athletic career. Committing was a nerve-wracking but ineffably relieving moment. I felt bad to reject so many good offers, but I knew that great fortunes awaited me. Over the summer, I registered for classes, went to online orientation, and pretty much did everything college freshmen usually do minus anything that's in person. Also, over the summer, I was focused on getting healthy. By June, I had taken a really long break from running and was the most out of shape that I've been in since probably 2017. It became that much more difficult to balance training enough and training too much. One wrong step, both literally and figuratively, and I'd have to start back at square one. Once I got on campus, I had access to a weight room, a pool, bikes, and pretty much everything I needed to rehabilitate and get back into shape. It's been a tough journey, and even today, nearly 14 months after I first injured my foot, I'm still struggling to make my comeback. However, all this extra time I've had since COVID allowed me to grow spiritually more than ever before. I realized how much I took running, my friends, family, coaches, and teammates for granted. I've made many mistakes throughout my running career and high school in general, and only when everything has been taken away from me have I realized that. In fact, as bold and controversial as it may sound, I truly believe that it was good for me to get injured and stay in quarantine for so long. As I said before, I'm religious and I'm not afraid to talk about it, even if you don't agree with me. I truly believe that it was in God's will for all of this to happen so that I may fully appreciate everything that has been given to me. I believe it was in God's will for me to wake up and not be able to do what I loved for weeks and months on end. Now, I realize that it is only when your gifts and graces are taken away from you that you realize how fortunate you are. Knowing how fortunate I am to have the opportunity to train and do what I love with endless support that so many people in the world do not have, I really cannot complain about my current situation and what has happened to me in the past. I believe God has allowed this to happen to me so that, in the future, I can be even more determined to reach my goals than I otherwise would have and achieve more than I could possibly dream of. I spent much of 2020 praying and reading spiritual and running related books. This helped me find a deeper sense of purpose in my life, and I can confidently say that I have been more dedicated towards my athletics and academics over the past few months than ever before. I want to do everything in my power to achieve my personal goals and help others along the way. On the track, in the classroom, wherever, I want to live up to the person that I believe God wants me to be and inspire others to follow in His footsteps. I cannot wait to see what Illinois Tech has in store for me and what I will do afterwards. I want to take this last moment to thank my high school and college coaches and teammates, my family, my non-runner friends, my teachers, counselors, professors, my brothers in SIGAP, the Sub 10 Squad group chat, and everyone else watching this video. Whether you have had a positive or negative impact on my life, whether you have bullied me or helped me more than I can ever pay back, you have helped shape me into the person I am today, and I would not have it any other way. Thank you all for listening to my D3 story. I hope you have enjoyed the holidays, the New Year's, and 2020 as a whole for any goodness it had to offer. Please, don't take anything you have for granted. Your family, friends, the opportunity to run, the roof over your head, the food on the table, the device you're watching this video on, the chance to connect to others on social media, anything. I promise you, practicing acts of gratitude will make your life infinitely better. This is what I plan to do this year, and every year going forward. Goodbye 2020. Hello 2021.